I help lead the development team on Cobblemon. I was one of the first few members on the team. Some of the things that I've worked on is the blockbench modeling and animation system, the Pokeball logic, and some of the battling architecture, and most recently, writing.
My name's Jackson. I normally go by Jack or Jackowes on the servers. I was brought on as an animator, but now I work mostly as a coder. I think it starts with we have three main categories. We have things that can fly in the air, we have things that can swim in the water, and then we have things that are on land. For the air, I'd say that's probably the most varied one. You'll get some rides that fly around like a bird, which is what the ride style itself is called. And then you'll have some that fly around like a jet. And then I think our final one for the air is you'll have some that hover. So like if you see a Magnezone out there, it'll fly different than a Charizard, and a Garchomp will fly different than both of them. Land, I think, is our most basic, I should say, right now. Least varied, yeah, yeah, definitely not basic, but least varied currently. Even though I think it might have the most mounts in it in general, and our stats generally make that feel very different from ride to ride. For water, we have things that go around like a boat, so like a Lapras. And then we have submarines. They can stay on the surface like a boat, but then they can sink down under the water. And then we have dolphins, which I think is the most fun out of the water ones because you can go underwater, and then once you go up to the surface, you can actually jump out of the water. I think my favorite would probably have to be between dolphin or bird.
I was working on some top secret projects originally, but I hopped onto writing fairly early. So what I did for writing specifically was a lot of the rendering, the just general architecture of writing, and the networking, and some of the camera work.
I pretty much only worked on riding stuff. A lot of the ride styles you'll see in the update I worked on, including the dynamic animation system when you're turning left or right with Pokemon and you see them look up or down. That was the work I helped with, but not the animations, more so allowing our animators to be able to do that. And then I also worked on the ride sound system so that our sound team could put sounds on Pokemon, and when they're flying around, you can hear wind sounds or flapping and whatnot.
So at the time, I was exploring a couple different mod packs and ended up playing one with the do a barrel roll mod. Instantly fell in love with just how smooth and immersive it felt. I knew that it seemed like a perfect match for our flying mounts, so that was the point where I started trying to hook Cobblemon into it and showing some videos. At that point, I thought it might be a bit too technically complicated to do in the base mod, especially if we could already just hook into do a barrel roll. What I was initially going to do was just make it as a side mod and call it do a barrel roll. Unfortunately, I did run into issues fairly early on, which didn't really make it feasible to continue using do a barrel roll. So at that point, I started just trying to rewrite the camera logic myself from scratch. After some trial and error and some assistance for some other developers on the Cobblemon team, we landed on a pretty solid solution. Yeah, that was a point where we kind of realized that this is worth exploring for Cobblemon and making it into the base mod.
Honestly, I think the thing I struggled with most at first was math. Once you go from doing, I'd say, more simple or straightforward Minecrafty ride stuff, such as like a horse, it goes left or right and jumps up and down, and then all of a sudden you're trying to do like barrel rolls, that induces a bit more complexity. And I think even with a college degree in engineering, I was still kind of out of my league at first, so it was a lot to catch up on that. I'd say that was probably the biggest issue for me.
My favorite thing about riding is definitely the multiplayer aspect. Being able to ride with your friends on so many different kinds of mounts and just seeing a bunch of people doing loops is really awesome. Yeah, the first time that I saw the developers hop on a server and flying around on a group of Charizards, I just couldn't help but smile because, like, at that point, you really know that we created something really awesome.
The amount of animations that have been made specifically for writing and the amount of dynamic animations that have been made for writing. I helped out with the system for that, and I think I honestly say that's probably the original reason I transitioned from just being an animator in this team to a coder, is I had a bit of an idea about I wanted the ride animations to be dynamic and not so static. Being able to see that now, especially with how unique every ride is from one another, I think that's probably my favorite thing about writing right now. I think for those, and I'll include myself in this, that love Cobblemon for its aesthetics, but don't exactly love battling, I think this update adds a lot. I think it induces the want to collect Pokemon for people who are not that interested in some of the other aspects of Cobblemon, but yeah, I'd say that's my big takeaway from this update for people.
Really glad to see all of the support for the mod. And as I said, like I've been here pretty much since the beginning, and I never thought it'd grow to where it is today. So I'm really thankful for you guys. Our team has put a ton of effort into this update, and I really hope you enjoy it and the others that will come after it.